It started with a beep. If there's one thing Bryn hated more than waking up, it was waking up to a goddamn beep, especially after what felt like 5 centuries of blissful nothingness. His eyelids were made of lead, his bones replaced with sandbags, and his brain, probably still on vacation, sipping cocktails in some sunny corner of the universe. But the beep was insistent, like a nagging mother-in-law programmed into the mattress. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Bryn," Leora's voice crackled over the intercom, dripping with her usual cocktail of sarcasm and cheer. "We've got a situation. Let me guess," Bryn mumbled, peeling himself from the cryopod as if it was a sticky wrapper. "We're not in Kansas anymore." "Try Saturn," Leora replied. "And not the good part." Bryn squinted through the glass of the cryo chamber, rubbing the blur from his eyes. The Arcturus wasn't supposed to wake them until they were safely orbiting Alpha Centauri, not doing donuts in Saturn's rings. His first instinct was to blame the AI, but that'd be like yelling at a toaster for burning your toast. Sure, it was satisfying, but ultimately pointless. Leora stood in the narrow corridor, her expression a mix of resolve and "I told you so." "Looks like someone messed with our beauty sleep." "Figures," Bryn said, trying to stretch the kinks out. The cryo chamber was far from 5-star accommodation, more like a coffin with a view. "And by someone, I mean aliens," Leora added, gesturing up at the cathedral-like cavern that had somehow replaced their views of endless stars with something decidedly more terrestrial. Pillars of alien architecture loomed overhead, the kind of thing interior designers might call ancient chic. Great for a museum, less so for interstellar travel. Aliens? Great. Any chance they come in peace, or is this the usual enslave and conquer shtick? "Let's just say they're not inviting us for tea," Leora replied, deadpan. "And our ship's been sabotaged." "Of course it has," Bryn sighed, brushing past her toward the control room. "And I suppose the button that says fix everything is missing too." Bingo. The control room was a graveyard. Panels shattered, wires hanging out like the entrails of some mechanical beast. A couple of other crew members were already there, looking just as thrilled to be awake as Bryn did. "Morning, sunshine," a grizzled voice greeted him. Dane, the ship's medic and resident grump, was elbow-deep in what used to be the communications console. "Dane," Bryn nodded. "Farah," he added, acknowledging the young pilot who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "What's the verdict?" Bryn asked, surveying the damage. "We're not dead," Dane grunted, which was about as optimistic as he got. "But we're not flying either." Farah gestured at the mess. "Looks like someone had a party in here and forgot to clean up. A messy divorce, more like," Bryn muttered, poking at a loose wire. "Any chance we can get back to sleep? I was having the best dream." "Not unless you want the aliens to tuck you in," Leora replied, arms crossed. She had a knack for leadership, partly because she was smart, but mostly because she refused to take anyone's crap. "We need to figure out what the hell's going on." "Well, we're in an alien temple," Farah said, as if that wasn't already obvious. "Might as well check out the sights," Bryn nodded. "Snooping around alien artifacts. What could go wrong?" The team gathered what they could: a couple of old-fashioned guns, a toolkit for Bryn, and the faint hope that they'd find some answers. The air was thick with tension as they stepped outside the ship, into the vast echoing hall of the temple. "At least the decor's nice," Dane said, trying to sound upbeat. "I love what they've done with the place." "Yeah," Bryn agreed, running a hand over the cold stone. "Real homey." Leora was already a few steps ahead, her gaze sharp and searching. "We need to find some kind of interface, something that can give us a clue about who or what brought us here. And why," Farah added. "Personally, I'm not a fan of being abducted in my sleep." Their footsteps echoed as they walked, the sound swallowed by the enormity of the chamber. Strange symbols and intricate carvings lined the walls, telling tales of gods and monsters, or possibly just a shopping list hard to say without a translator. "You think this is some sort of shrine?" Dane asked, running a finger over one of the carvings. "Either that or an alien art gallery," Bryn replied. "I'm betting on the former." "I'm betting on a headache," Farah groaned, rubbing her temples. As if in response, a low hum filled the air, the kind that turned bones to jelly and teeth to tuning forks. Lights flickered on along the walls, illuminating the room in shades of eerie blue. "Welcome, humans," a voice boomed, deep and resonant, like thunder with a bad attitude. "Oh great," Bryn muttered. "A talking temple." The alien voice continued, ignoring his sarcasm. "You are now guests of the Cathul Dominion." "Guests," Dane snorted. "Right, and I'm a millionaire. All your technologies and possessions are now property of the Dominion," the voice went on, with the sort of disinterest usually reserved for automated phone lines. "Not my collection of old Earth comics," Farah gasped, mock horror in her voice. "Surrender is mandatory," the voice concluded, with the kind of finality that suggested arguing was about as useful as a chocolate teapot. "Well," Leora said, dry as a desert bone, "that's our cue to leave." Bryn laughed, a kind of desperate amusement in his eyes. "Anybody else want to tell Mr. Voiceover where he can stick his dominion?" "Only if you do the talking," Dane replied. "I'm not great at public speaking." As the lights dimmed, the crew exchanged glances, each weighing their options, which were limited to say the least. Fight the aliens or, well, fight the aliens. Not much of a choice. "Guess we'll need a plan," Leora said, determination in her eyes. "Something tells me these guys aren't big on negotiation." "I'm in," Farah said, grinning. "Let's show them what humans are made of." Dane shrugged, looking less enthusiastic but just as ready. "Why not? I've got nowhere else to be." Bryn nodded, feeling a surge of camaraderie despite the doom hanging over them. "All right, let's give him hell." Together they moved forward, a ragtag band of humans against a vast, unfeeling empire. Sure, the odds were crap and the stakes were high, but they had guts, a few wits, and way too much caffeine. And really, what more could you ask for in a fight for survival? Leora squinted at the walls, trying to decipher the swirling alien glyphs. They were about as readable as a doctor's handwriting on a bad day. "Looks like this place was designed by someone with an obsession for squiggles," she said, giving up and turning to Bryn. Bryn was crouched over an alien artifact that looked suspiciously like a coffee maker. "You think this thing brews anything worth drinking?" "If it does, I doubt it's compatible with our digestive systems," Leora replied, rolling her eyes. "Wouldn't want to die from alien-grade caffeine overdose." Bryn chuckled, a rare sound in the oppressive silence of the temple. He tapped a button on the artifact, which promptly whirred and did nothing. "Figures," he said, giving it a gentle kick. "Even alien tech needs a good smack now and then. Let's hope their ritualistic culture includes instructions for dummies like us," Leora said, moving on and brushing her hand over a series of glowing panels. They flickered to life, displaying what looked like a map. "Hey, check this out," she called to Bryn. "I think I found the temple's layout." He joined her, peering over her shoulder. "Great. Do you see a route to the nearest exit or maybe a gift shop? I'd love a souvenir or two." "No gift shop, but this area here," she pointed to a large chamber on the map. "Looks like it could be some sort of control room or central hub. That's where they keep the big red off button for the planetary defenses, right?" Bryn quipped. "I've always wanted to press one of those." "Don't we all?" Leora nodded. "Let's head there. Maybe we can find something useful, like an instruction manual or an alien with a grudge against their own people." As they moved deeper into the temple, the oppressive architecture seemed to close in on them. Alien statues lined the halls, each one more grotesque than the last. They loomed like silent judges, their eyes following the pair with unsettling interest. "I think they're watching us," Bryn muttered, casting a wary glance at the nearest statue, a menacing figure with tentacles where its mouth should be. What gave it away? The creepy eyes or the fact that they look like they're ready to spring to life and devour us whole? Leora replied, keeping her voice steady. "Both. I'm betting on both." In the next chamber they found themselves surrounded by more of the glyphs, these ones carved into massive stone tablets. Bryn paused, tracing a finger over the indentations. "I wonder what these say. No trespassing or please don't touch. Probably exit through the gift shop," Leora joked, scanning the room for anything of immediate use. Think we can take these with us? Might fetch a good price back on Earth. Sure, if we can find a buyer who collects alien bric-a-brac. Their banter masked the simmering tension, the kind of tension that comes with being light years away from anything familiar and at the mercy of a species that saw them as little more than insects under a microscope. So, what's our plan if we run into the welcoming committee? Bryn asked, as they continued their exploration. Smile, wave, and hope they have a soft spot for lost tourists, Leora replied, her sarcasm a shield against the anxiety building inside her. Finally, they reached a door that seemed to be the entrance to the central hub depicted on the map. It was sealed tight, with no visible means of entry. Great, Bryn said, examining the smooth surface. Locked out of the one place we actually want to go. Leora studied the door, tapping a series of buttons on the alien console beside it. Maybe if I... With a soft hiss, the door slid open, revealing a room filled with control panels and more of the alien glyphs. In the center, a large console dominated the space, surrounded by what looked like holographic displays. Jackpot, Bryn said, stepping inside. Now let's see if we can make some sense of this mess. As Leora began examining the displays, Bryn wandered over to a bank of consoles, running his fingers over the controls. What do you think these do? Press 1 and find out, Leora suggested, not looking up from her work. Worst case, we blow up a small planet. No pressure then, Bryn replied dryly before cautiously tapping a button. The humming of the temple shifted, the displays flickering through a series of alien symbols before settling on a new configuration. Whoa, Leora said, glancing up. Looks like you just activated something. Yeah, Bryn said, trying to sound nonchalant. As long as it doesn't involve self-destruct sequences, I'm good. Leora traced a finger along one of the holographic displays, studying the new information. Wait a second, this might be a communication log. Bryn perked up. Can you access it? Maybe we can eavesdrop on what these aliens are up to. Working on it, Leora said, her fingers dancing over the controls. If I can just... There, got it. The room filled with the sound of alien chatter, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and guttural tones. Leora fiddled with the settings, trying to find a translation. How do they understand each other? Bryn wondered aloud. Sounds like two cats fighting inside a barrel. Give me a second, Leora said, adjusting the controls. Slowly, the noise resolved into something resembling language. Extraction of resources proceeding as planned, a voice said, dispassionate and clinical. Ensure human captives are contained, another voice responded. They are valuable for further study. Yeah, we're real valuable, Bryn muttered, his sarcasm hiding a flicker of anger. Leora frowned, listening intently. Sounds like they are using our ship's resources. Probably why we ended up here in the first place. We need to find out what they are after and how to stop them, Bryn said, glancing at the displays. Any ideas? There's got to be some way to communicate with the other captives, Leora said, thinking aloud. If we can organize a resistance, we might stand a chance. How many humans do you think are here? Bryn asked, a hint of hope in his voice. More than just us, hopefully. Otherwise, it's going to be one hell of a lonely uprising. Bryn chuckled, though there was little humor in it. So, we're starting a revolution. Great, I'll make the t-shirts. Leora shot him a wry smile. Gotta have merchandise for the cause, right? Right alongside our alien souvenir collection. With a plan forming, they set to work. Leora focused on learning as much as she could from the control room's displays, while Bryn tinkered with anything that looked like it might be useful. Hours slipped by, marked only by the dimming and brightening of the alien lights. They were making progress, but it was slow. Each step forward met with new complications. Any luck with the comms? Bryn asked, taking a break from deciphering a particularly stubborn panel that refused to cooperate. A bit, Leora replied. I think I might be able to send a message to any humans within range. Bryn nodded, crossing his arms. Great. Let's hope they're friendly and not already on the aliens' payroll. With a final adjustment, Leora activated the communication system, broadcasting a simple message. Humans, if you're out there, we need to organize. Meet us near the central hub. We're starting a resistance. Short and sweet, Bryn commented. Let's just hope someone's listening. Leora leaned back, stretching her arms and trying to shake off the fatigue that was creeping in. Now we wait. While we're waiting, care to speculate on what the aliens want with us? Bryn asked, his tone more curious than concerned. Maybe they think we're some kind of exotic pet, Leora suggested, grinning. Or perhaps they're just really into human reality TV. Great. Just what I always wanted, to be someone's science experiment. The waiting was the hardest part, the minutes stretching into what felt like hours. Each sound from the temple caused them to glance around nervously, half expecting a squad of aliens to appear at any moment. Finally, the silence was broken by the faint sound of footsteps, echoing through the corridors. Bryn and Leora exchanged a look, both reaching for their weapons out of instinct. "Friend or foe, you think?" Bryn asked, his grip tightening on the handle of his gun. "We'll find out soon enough," Leora replied, stepping forward to meet whoever was coming. The figure that appeared in the doorway was human, a man with a weary expression and eyes filled with cautious hope. He was followed by a small group, each one looking just as worn and wary. "You're the ones who sent the message?" the man asked, his voice a blend of relief and skepticism. "That's us," Leora confirmed, lowering her weapon in a show of trust. "Name's Leora, this is Bryn," the man nodded, gesturing to his group. "I'm Gav, and these are some of the others. We've been stuck here for a while, trying to figure out what the hell's going on." "Welcome to the club," Bryn said, offering a small smile. "We've got a few ideas if you're interested." "We're interested," Gav replied, a flicker of determination in his eyes. "Anything to get out of this mess." The group gathered closer, a motley crew of humans united by circumstance and desperation. Each one had their own story, their own reason for being here, but those details could wait. For now, they focused on the task at hand, organizing a resistance and finding a way to reclaim their freedom. "So, what's the plan?" Gav asked, looking to Leora and Bryn for guidance. "We take the fight to the aliens," Leora said, her voice steady. "We find out what they want and we stop them." "Simple as that." "Simple," Bryn echoed, though the word held a world of complexity. "But not easy." "Nothing worth doing ever is," Leora replied, a hint of a smile on her lips. The group shared a moment of silence, each one contemplating the journey ahead. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of their depth, but they had something the aliens underestimated: determination. And perhaps, just maybe, that would be enough. "Right," Bryn said, clapping his hands like a coach about to lead a group of hopeless athletes. "So we've got a ragtag bunch of humans, a temple infested with alien tech, and no plan. Who's feeling optimistic?" Gav scratched at the stubble on his chin. "Honestly, I felt more confident in a blindfolded knife fight." Bryn snorted. "Well, at least you know your odds." Now the aliens seem to have a soft spot for resource extraction, and since I'm assuming they don't mean the mineral kind, it's up to us to be the spanner in their works. "Assuming we find any works to chuck a spanner into," Leora added, pacing the room, "and preferably without ending up on their vivisection table. Small details lie." "Small details." Gav, meanwhile, was eyeing a nearby panel with the kind of wariness usually reserved for unexploded ordnance. "Do we even know what any of this junk does?" "Sure," Bryn replied. "It's about as inscrutable as my ex's mood swings." The group chuckled, a sound tinged with desperation, a humor born from staring down the barrel of impossibility and still finding a way to laugh. "All right," Leora continued, folding her arms. "First step, we need intel. Second, we need to make sure our friends don't notice us poking around." "Stealthy and smart," Bryn nodded. "Lucky for you, I'm neither." "Well, you're one of them," Leora shot back, a grin teasing at her lips. "Gee, thanks." Just then, a noise echoed through the corridors. A sound like someone had dropped a sack of hammers down a metal staircase. Everyone stiffened, eyes darting towards the source. "Sounds like company," Gav muttered, reaching for the crude weapon hanging at his side. "You expecting anyone?" "Not unless it's the pizza delivery guy," Bryn replied, edging toward the door. "And I don't think they deliver to Saturn." The door creaked open, revealing a peculiar figure, a bizarre blend of alien and monk, swathed in robes that seemed to shift in hue like a chameleon's scales. Its eyes glowed with an unsettling intelligence. "Well, hello there," Leora said, raising an eyebrow. "Did you take the wrong turn at the space chapel?" The alien tilted its head, a gesture that could have been curiosity or indigestion. "I am Hierophant Zix," it intoned, voice a strange medley of electronic tones and whispers. "I seek an audience." "An audience?" Bryn echoed. "Mate, we're not running a talk show here." Zix's eyes flickered, the alien equivalent of a knowing smile. "I am aware of your intent to resist. Your courage is admirable, albeit misguided. So what's your game?" Leora asked, cutting to the chase. "My game," Zix said slowly, "is survival, yours and mine." Gav stepped forward, suspicion etched into every line of his face. "Why help us? What's in it for you?" Zix's gaze swept the room, lingering on each human in turn. "This place, it's not the utopia my people envision. Our leaders are inflexible. Perhaps you might call them tyrannical. What can you offer us?" Leora asked, always the pragmatist. "Information," Zix replied, voice smooth as oil. "Consider me a double agent, though in this case the employer is somewhat oblivious." Bryn exchanged a glance with Leora. "All right, but if this turns out to be a trap, I'll haunt you with the kind of persistence that even the afterlife can't shake." The glimmer in Zix's eyes suggested amusement. Duly noted. With their new ally, the humans dove into a cacophony of whispered plans and strategies. Zix provided just enough information to make Bryn suspect they were missing the punchline of a cosmic joke. "There's a control room," Zix explained, gesturing with a long-fingered hand. "It's heavily guarded but essential for any sabotage." "And by heavily guarded you mean?" Gav prodded. "I suggest subtlety," Zix replied. Bryn chuckled. "Subtlety, please. My idea of subtlety involves a sledgehammer." Undeterred, Zix continued, "Your approach should be understated. Their sensors are sensitive to overt hostility." Bryn sighed, turning to Leora. "Guess we'll have to check our fireworks at the door." "Can't believe we're trusting a space priest," Gav muttered as they prepared to move. "What's next?" "Alien therapy sessions." "Better than their buffet menu," Bryn quipped, earning a few laughs. "Right, let's move out before I start questioning our sanity or Zix's fashion choices." The group proceeded with caution, tension ratcheting up with each step. The temple's corridors seemed to close in around them, walls whispering secrets that only Zix seemed to understand. "Here," Zix said, halting before a nondescript panel that glowed faintly. "Beyond this you will find the control room." "Looks easy enough," Leora remarked, studying the alien glyphs. "Easy as juggling chainsaws," Bryn added, testing the door's resistance. "Let's just hope they don't have a surprise pachinko machine as security." The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a room bristling with alien tech. Displays pulsed with information, none of it recognizable. "All right," Gav said, taking a deep breath. "Let's make a mess." But reality didn't quite match their ambition. The moment Leora attempted to interface with the controls, alarms blared through the temple. "Nice going," Bryn shouted over the din, fingers scrambling over the controls. "Could you make it any louder?" "It's not like they left an instruction manual," Leora shot back, frantically pressing buttons. "Besides, I thought you liked a dramatic entrance." Zix's voice cut through the chaos, calm and commanding. "You must abort. They will converge on this position." "Abort," Gav echoed, eyes wide. "We barely started, trust me," Zix insisted. "You must flee." Bryn, never one to ignore a voice of reason, especially when it involved self-preservation, grabbed Leora's arm. "Time to go lie. We can save the world another day." With no time to argue, the group retreated, leaving behind a cacophony of sirens and flashing lights. The escape was chaotic, the corridors a blur of motion and sound. "You didn't mention the whole place would go ballistic," Bryn gasped, as they finally ducked into a side passage, alarms still echoing in the distance. "I did not anticipate incompetence," Zix replied, the alien somehow managing to sound both apologetic and mildly entertained. "Oh," Please, by all means, continue to inspire confidence, Leora snapped, leaning against the wall to catch her breath. On the plus side, Bryn said, ever the optimist, at least they know we mean business now. Yeah, Gav grumbled, the business of botching things up. Look, Leora said, lifting her hands in a placating gesture. We need a better strategy. Zix, what else can you tell us? Zix considered this, eyes flickering thoughtfully. The main operations center is key. Disabling it will cripple their command structure. And it's probably guarded by space dragons, Bryn quipped, earning groans from the group. Only metaphorically, Zix assured with an unsettlingly toothy grin. Great, Gav sighed. So, same plan, but this time try not to trigger the death march. Essentially, Zix agreed, unperturbed by the tension in the air. Just your average Tuesday then, Leora muttered, rubbing her temples. All right, people, let's rest up and regroup. We'll need fresh minds and steady hands if we're going to pull this off. As the humans settled down in their makeshift hideout, Bryn turned to Leora, a grin playing on his lips. Think we'll live to tell the tale? Only if you stop making those damn jokes, she replied, though the corner of her mouth twitched up in a reluctant smile. The night, or whatever passed for night under artificial lights, slipped by in a haze of half-sleep and guarded watchfulness. The temple remained alive with alien activity, a reminder of the challenge before them. Morning greeted them with the same oppressive atmosphere, the air thick with unspoken tension. They gathered for a meal that was more survival ration than breakfast, fortified with caffeine and a stubborn refusal to quit. All right, folks, Leora announced, squaring her shoulders. Let's show these aliens what happens when they mess with the wrong species. Bryn, ever the gallant commentator, raised his mug to making the universe a slightly more chaotic place. Their spirits lifted, however briefly. The humans set off once more into the labyrinth, with Zix trailing behind, the aliens' motives as inscrutable as ever. The corridors of the temple wound around them like the coils of a giant serpent. Each corner hid potential disaster, each shadow a reminder of how out of their depth they truly were. Anyone else feel like we're playing interstellar hide and seek? Bryn asked, voice low. Yeah, Gav replied. And we're losing. Despite the odds, hope flickered like a stubborn candle in the dark. They had a purpose, a goal, and if they could just reach the operations center, maybe they could find a way to disrupt the aliens' plans. No guts, no glory, Leora murmured, as they approached their objective. Or, as my dad used to say, Bryn added, no brains, no headaches. The atmosphere was oppressive, the stakes high, and yet as they prepared to breach the operations center, the humans couldn't help but grin. In that moment they were more than captives, more than pawns in some alien game. They were warriors, united by circumstance, driven by a shared desire for freedom. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be enough to tip the scales in their favor. All right, Leora said, taking a deep breath. Let's do this. With Zix's guidance, the group moved toward the operations center, determined to succeed or go down swinging. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but for the first time since their arrival, they had a glimmer of hope. And as they stormed into the unknown, they carried that hope with them, along with a healthy dose of sarcasm and a readiness to embrace whatever lay ahead. Rhythms and rhymes, Leora muttered, tapping her fingers against the cold metal panel. Who knew aliens were into interpretive dance? Bryn peered over her shoulder, brow furrowed. You're not suggesting we moonwalk our way through this, are you? You have a better idea, Leora retorted, suppressing a grin. Because last I checked, our stealth operation scored a solid F-. Gav leaned in, his skepticism palpable. Let me get this straight. You think the temple reacts to rhythmic patterns? What, you planning to audition for Galactic Idol next? Got to admit, Bryn said, nodding appreciatively, if these aliens are into dance-offs, it explains their terrible aim, probably too busy choreographing their laser drills. Leora turned to face them, eyes gleaming with a newfound, albeit slightly insane, hope. Look, I noticed how the panels flickered when we were running. It's like they responded to the cadence of our feet. Maybe there's a way to use that. And I thought my tap dancing phase was a waste of time, Gav added dryly, shaking his head. Fine, let's humor this madness. What's the plan, Fred Astaire? First, we need a safe space to practice our moves, Leora said, ignoring the obvious sarcasm. Zix, can you find us somewhere we won't be interrupted by the local choreography police? Zix's eyes flickered in what could only be described as a bemused agreement. There is a maintenance corridor nearby, rarely visited. And how do you know that? Bryn asked, suspicion lacing his tone. I have my ways, Zix replied cryptically, which in alien speak probably translated to, I'm watching you always. All right, gang, Bryn sighed, let's get our groove on. The maintenance corridor was cramped, dark, and filled with the kind of smell that suggested it had seen better centuries. But it was private, and that was enough. The humans gathered, Zix a silent spectator to their impending humiliation. So, Bryn started, clapping his hands together. Anyone know how to moonwalk? Leora rolled her eyes. More like we need to invent our own alien line dance. Something simple, repeatable. Gav chuckled, leaning against the wall. Oh sure, just a quick two-step with jazz hands and we're golden. Pay attention, Leora said, glaring at them. This could be our only chance to communicate with the temple. If it reacts to rhythm, maybe we can. I don't know, hack it through dance. You're suggesting we polka our way to freedom? Bryn asked, eyebrow raised. I can see it now, the great interstellar waltz of 2349. Do you have a better idea? Leora snapped. He shrugged. Not unless you count my brilliant plan of running faster than Gav if things go south. Zix observed the exchange with an expression that could only be described as alien bemusement. Your species' resourcefulness is unique. That's a polite way of saying we're hopeless, Gav quipped, stretching his limbs. All right, let's get into this. What's the first step? Leora focused, starting with a simple rhythm, tapping her foot. The others followed, their mismatched attempts at synchronization a testament to their desperation, or lack thereof. Feels like we're back in gym class, Bryn muttered, trying to keep pace. Except this time the stakes are slightly higher than dodgeball. As they moved, something curious happened. The panels lining the corridor began to pulse faintly, a soft thrum echoing their movements. Leora's eyes brightened. See, it's working. The temple's responding, or it's just laughing at us, Gav said, but the glimmer of hope was infectious. Bryn grinned, unable to resist a jab. Imagine explaining this to command. Yes, sir, we were saved by the power of interpretive dance. They continued their impromptu rehearsal, the rhythm growing more confident, if not exactly graceful. Each step felt like an absurdity, but absurdity had brought them this far. Hours passed, the humans moving in increasingly fluid motions, the alien panels reacting more vividly with each cycle. It was a bizarre symbiosis, human determination against alien indifference. We might just pull this off, Leora said, panting slightly but smiling. If we can get the temple to respond this strongly, maybe we can trigger a system shutdown. Or at least make it think it's having a power nap, Bryn added. Either way, I'm starting to believe in this dance magic of yours. Gav stopped, wiping sweat from his brow. I've never felt so ridiculous yet so weirdly hopeful. If this works, I'll never laugh at interpretive dance again. Don't get too comfortable, Leora warned. We need to perfect this. Rhythm, timing, everything has to be spot on. Guess it's back to the dance floor then, Bryn said, resuming their steps. And to think I hated musical theater. As they fell back into their makeshift routine, the stakes loomed large. Yet for the first time in this alien nightmare, they had a plan. An insane, completely unprecedented plan, but a plan nonetheless. Later, as they sat in the dim light, their limbs aching from the unexpected exercise, Bryn turned to Zix. So, what do you think? Will our magic feat save the day? Zix tilted his head, an unreadable expression on his alien features. Your creativity is impressive, unorthodox but perhaps effective. High praise, Gav said, sarcasm in full swing. Coming from a guy whose species uses coffee makers for espionage, Leora snorted. If we survive this, we should start a dance troupe, the Cosmic Calamities. Bryn laughed. With our luck, we'd probably end up opening for a Zixian poetry slam. Hey, Gav shot back. We might be a disaster, but we're a damn good disaster. Here's to our impending encore, Bryn said, raising an invisible glass. May we waltz our way out of this mess and onto the safe, boring shores of Earth. As they prepared for another round of rehearsal, the temple seemed to hum with anticipation, as if awaiting the next act in this cosmic farce. All right, Leora said, clapping her hands. Let's do this again. But this time try to keep up, will you? Commanding and demanding, Bryn teased. It's like being back in boot camp. And just like boot camp, it's going to hurt, Gav grumbled, though there was a smile tugging at his lips. So they danced in a dark corridor at the edge of the universe, united by desperation and the hope that maybe, just maybe, their ridiculous plan could succeed. As their steps echoed through the temple, a spark of something indefinable flickered to life, a shared understanding that in the vastness of space, sometimes the only way forward was to embrace the absurd. And as they moved, the universe seemed to move with them, a reminder that even in the darkest corners, human ingenuity and insanity would find a way to shine. The moment of reckoning came not with a bang, but with a series of awkwardly timed footsteps. The maintenance corridor, once a private haven for their dance floor disasters, had betrayed them. Or maybe it had just gotten bored. Either way, the glinting metal walls echoed with the sound of approaching footsteps that were decidedly not part of their routine. Bryn glanced at Leora, who was still trying to get her breath back after their latest attempt at cosmic choreography. Looks like we're about to have company, he muttered, trying to keep the panic out of his voice. Great, Leora replied, sarcasm dripping from every letter. Just what we needed, an audience. Gav, leaning against the wall with a resigned expression, added, maybe they'll give us pointers or just shoot us. Either way, I'm over this gig. Their uninvited guests turned out to be exactly who they feared, the alien overlords with expressions, or at least the alien equivalent, that seemed to say, what the hell are these humans doing? A tense silence stretched out, broken only by the ominous hum of alien tech and Bryn's belated realization that his heart really shouldn't be pounding this hard for interpretive dance. You know, Leora said, stepping forward with an air of bravado that was more bluff than bravery, we could have charged admission for this. The aliens didn't laugh, or blink, or even twitch, really. It was like trying to amuse a brick wall that had grown legs and a superiority complex. The leader of their captors, a particularly imposing specimen with skin that shimmered like spun mercury, finally spoke, or at least made a sound that the humans' translators insisted was speech. Unauthorized activity, it intoned, each word a leaden weight. Punishment required. Great, Bryn muttered to Gav. We're gonna get detention from the alien principal. The punishment, as it turned out, was worse than they'd imagined. Violent, painful, and distinctly lacking in humor. The kind of experience you'd not even wish on your worst enemy, unless your enemy was a truly awful dancer. Bryn, Leora, and Gav were dragged away, each trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. It wasn't easy when you were being frog-marched by an alien with limbs that resembled a shiny arachnid. The corridor to their makeshift cell seemed longer than usual, though maybe that was the adrenaline making everything feel surreal. Or maybe it was the fact that they were about to be punished by beings who considered them little more than sentient ants. It wasn't long before they found themselves thrown into separate cells, the heavy clang of the doors echoing much louder in their heads than it should have. Isolation. Not exactly conducive to morale boosting. Well, Bryn said to no one in particular, this is a new low. The walls didn't reply naturally. Alien architecture was notoriously bad at conversation. The next few days blurred into a grim monotony punctuated by the occasional sneer from their captors. Bryn found himself dwelling in his own thoughts far too much, something he'd always tried to avoid. It was like sharing a room with an annoying relative who only ever wanted to talk about the worst things in life. Every so often, Bryn heard the distant echoes of Leora's voice through the vents. It was comforting and heartbreaking all at once, A reminder that, somewhere beyond these walls, someone else was sharing his hellish experience. He wondered how Leora was holding up. She was tough, sure, but isolation wore down even the strongest ones among them. Gav's absence was like a missing limb. Bryn missed the man's sarcastic barbs and the way he could find humor in the most ridiculous situations. Without that, the silence was a thick, oppressive thing that pressed in on him from all sides. Zix, of course, was conspicuously absent. Probably off somewhere doing whatever inscrutable things aliens did when they weren't tormenting their prisoners. Or maybe he was just silently judging them from afar. Bryn found himself talking to the walls more often than he cared to admit. "Do you think they have a suggestion box somewhere?" he asked the ceiling. Something like, "Dear overlords, your customer service is dreadful. Please improve." The ceiling, much like everything else, offered no reply. The next time Bryn was permitted a glimpse beyond his small, claustrophobic cell, it was to be shuffled through the corridors for what the aliens referred to as re-education. Bryn preferred to think of it as unsolicited indoctrination, but he'd never been good at following the party line. It was during one of these rare outings that he caught sight of Leora. She looked worn, her usual fire dimmed but not extinguished. They locked eyes for a moment, just a moment, and in that shared glance, Bryn found a flicker of the tenacity that had driven her to suggest dancing their way to freedom in the first place. "How's life on the inside?" Bryn called out, the sarcasm a flimsy mask for the underlying concern. She smirked, though it was strained. "Oh, you know, same old. Just trying to get my steps right for Galactic Idol." They were herded apart before he could say anything more, but that one exchange was enough to remind Bryn that, despite everything, they weren't quite beaten yet. Not entirely. Days blurred into more of the same. Bryn's sense of time was unspooled, unraveling like a threadbare scarf. He saw less and less of his fellow humans. The aliens were good at that, keeping them isolated, minimizing their chances of collusion. But in the quiet moments, he remembered their ridiculous dance rehearsals and the camaraderie they'd found in shared absurdity. Those memories were a lifeline, a thin thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could turn this around. Of course, Bryn had his doubts. After all, they were up against a race that had mastered interstellar travel, resource extraction, and presumably how to make a mean cup of alien coffee. The humans' best plan involved tap shoes and wishful thinking. But Bryn wasn't about to give up. Not just yet. He had a gut feeling that the universe wasn't done screwing with them, and he intended to be there for the grand finale, whatever shape it took. As he lay back on the cold, unyielding cot, Bryn allowed himself a fleeting smile. Because if there was one thing humans were good at, it was muddling through the impossible with a snarky comment and a middle finger raised to the cosmos. Bryn's cell was a lovely place if you had a penchant for existential dread. The decor was minimalist, cold metal walls and a mattress that could double as a medieval torture device. He lay on it, contemplating the peculiar way his life had spiraled. Out in the great, dark void of space, they'd been caught dancing in a maintenance corridor like some cosmic joke. And now, well, here he was. How had he ended up being the punchline? His musings were delightfully interrupted by the faintest of sounds, a tapping through the ventilation system. It was like a secret Morse code, except Bryn was no Boy Scout, and deciphering any of it was about as likely as him winning Galactic Idol. He squinted at the vent, willing it to become interesting. It didn't, but the tapping continued steadily, and he finally recognized it, not as Morse code or some secret alien language, but as a rhythm. He laughed aloud, a brittle sound bouncing off the walls. It was the beat of one of their dance routines. Leora, bless her gutsy heart, was communicating from her own personal slice of alien hell. The tapping stopped and Bryn's smile faded. He sat up, stretching the kinks from his spine before crawling to the vent. "Leora," he called softly, half expecting the air to laugh back at him. Her voice came through, more a whisper than a shout. "Bryn, you there? Unless I've finally lost it and I'm talking to myself, yeah, I'm here. Good, I've got news. And no, it's not that the lovely overlords have opened a buffet. Shame, Bryn quipped. I was really in the mood for some alien slop. There was a pause, the sort that hangs heavy in the air, filled with unspoken tension. I've been thinking about the temple, Leora finally said. The glyphs on those panels, I've been piecing some of it together. Bryn rolled his eyes. Sure, Leora, didn't know you were fluent in ancient alien. Well, you know me, I like to keep my skills fresh. Her sarcasm was a comforting echo of normalcy. Those symbols aren't just decorative, they are instructions. The dance, it might actually unlock something. Bryn felt a flicker of hope, the dim light of a candle in a cavern. Go on, I'm hanging on your every word. It's not just about the rhythm, it's the sequence. The damn thing is a key, and if we can get it right, it could give us control over the temple's systems. Bryn laughed, a short, sharp bark. Great, so all we need to do is be perfect. Well, no pressure, Leora replied dryly. Just the fate of the universe as we know it. You're really killing the vibe here, Bryn said. But I love a good underdog story. A low rumble from somewhere in the bowels of the ship reminded them of their precarious position. Bryn swore he could feel the alien overlord's contempt vibrating through the walls. Maybe they've got a soft spot for interpretive dance after all, he mused. So, Leora pressed, are we doing this? As if we have a choice. It's either dance or die, right? And I'm not ready to check out yet. Then let's get the band back together, she said. We've got a gig to crash. Days passed in a string of monotony punctuated by brief, scribbled conversations through the vents. Leora's insights about the glyphs were solidifying into a plan, one as risky as it was ridiculous. When Bryn was finally dragged out for another round of re-education, which was more of an exercise in surviving boredom than anything else, he managed a whispered conversation with Gav. Got some good news to share, Bryn murmured, glancing over his shoulder to ensure their alien guard wasn't paying attention. Gav raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah, they finally put in a pool. Better, we might have a way out. Leora cracked those glyphs. Gav's interest peaked and he leaned in closer. You mean the ancient alien graffiti we tried to interpret while pretending to be a boy band? Exactly. Turns out it's more like a user manual. We can use the dance to interface with the temple's systems. Gav let out a low whistle. The universe loves a good irony, huh? We're gonna boogie our way to freedom, or to a spectacular demise. Either way I'm in, Gav said with a grin. Never did like dying of boredom. The plan was simple. Simple in the way that juggling chainsaws while blindfolded could be called simple. Bryn, Leora, and Gav needed to find a way to the temple and perform the dance with the precision and flair of a well-oiled machine. A machine that hadn't been oiled in quite some time, given their current state of disrepair. Their opportunity came quicker than expected. An alien guard slipped up, maybe distracted by the sporting event equivalent of watching paint dry, and Bryn found a moment to exploit a weakness in the guard rotation. He managed to slip a message to Leora, one that promised a chance to regroup in the maintenance corridor. It was a reunion of sorts when they all met there, each carrying the wear and tear of their captivity. But there was a fire in their eyes, a shared resolve that could burn through anything the universe threw at them. All right, folks, Bryn announced as they huddled together, time for a dress rehearsal. Let's see if our cosmic choreography can win us a ticket out of here. Didn't bring my tap shoes, Gav said, tapping his bare feet. Hope that won't be a problem, Leora chuckled, though there was tension beneath it. Just focus on the sequence. Rhythm's our ally, and if we screw it up, well, at least we'll go down dancing. The maintenance corridor was quiet, save for the ever-present hum of alien tech. Bryn took a deep breath, centering himself, feeling the weight of it all settle into his bones. All right, he said. On my mark. They moved together, a synchronized symphony, albeit one prone to the occasional stumble. The panel's glyphs began to respond, glowing in time with their movements. The air charged with energy, a current that pulls through them, connecting their steps to the alien technology. Keep going, Leora urged, her voice breathless but filled with determination. Bryn could feel the rhythm taking hold, the sequence locking into place. It was absurd, yes, but there was a certain elegance to it, an intricate dance between chaos and control. The panels were glowing brighter now, a kaleidoscope of colors that shifted with each step. They were close, so close. "Last push," Bryn called, and they poured every ounce of energy into the final flourish. The corridor pulsed with light, the panels flickering in a pattern that hummed with power. For a heart-stopping moment, everything paused. The universe held its breath, waiting to see if they'd pulled it off or if cosmic irony would have the last laugh. The glyphs blazed with light and the walls trembled as unseen mechanisms locked into place. There was a sound, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated through their very bones. Then silence. Bryn stood there, panting, heart racing from more than just exertion. "Did we just—" "Yeah," Leora said, her voice a mixture of relief and disbelief. "I think we did." Gav punched the air, a triumphant whoop escaping him. "We're goddamn geniuses, or the luckiest fools alive." "Probably both," Bryn conceded. "But let's not stick around to test our luck further." With the temple's systems attuned to their control, their path was clear. A way to override the detention protocols, to slip past their alien captors and make a break for the Arcturus. "Time to make like a tree and leave," Bryn said, leading the charge as they dashed through corridors that seemed strangely welcoming now. Their escape was a blur, a mad dash through the temple, the alien architecture responding to their presence in ways they barely understood. Alarms blared, the overlords undoubtedly realizing something was amiss, but Bryn, Leora, and Gav moved with purpose. For once, the universe seemed to be on their side, or at least amused enough to let them make their grand exit. As they reached the docking bay, the Arcturus stood waiting, a familiar sight amidst the alien chaos. They slipped aboard, laughter bubbling up as they sealed the hatch behind them. It was a sound born of adrenaline and relief, a triumphant note that echoed through the ship. Bryn slid into the pilot's seat, fingers flying over controls that felt like home. "Let's see if we can't make it to Alpha Centauri without any more dance recitals." The ship hummed to life beneath them, and Bryn felt a swell of gratitude for human ingenuity and sheer dumb luck. As they broke free from the temple's gravitational pull, the stars stretched out before them, an endless sea of possibilities. Leora leaned back in her seat, the tension of captivity melting away. "We really did it. Never doubted us for a second," Gav replied, though his grin suggested otherwise. "Just another day in the life of cosmic calamities," Bryn said, a smile tugging at his lips. As the Arcturus leapt into the void, the universe seemed to wink back, a reminder that even the darkest corners could be lit up by a well-timed dance step and a little human stubbornness. The maintenance corridor was dim and cramped, the kind of place you'd expect to find rats if rats had the good sense to travel into space. Instead, it was filled with 3 humans and an AI that took delight in giving unhelpful advice in its best imitation of a monotone. Bryn, dripping with sweat and wearing the grim determination of a man who'd rather not die today, glanced at Leora and Gav. "All right, let's turn this into our breakout performance. Remember, we're not just doing this for ourselves. We're doing it to give those alien bastards the middle finger." Gav snorted, eyes twinkling despite the dire circumstances. "Best motivation I've ever had to dance since they offered free beer at my cousin's wedding." Leora, her expression a mix of anxiety and resolve, gave them both a nod. "Channel your inner rock star. Let's show Saturn what humanity's got hiding behind its pathetic prison jumpsuits." Bryn placed his hand on the cold, unfeeling wall, feeling the slight vibration of alien tech beneath his fingertips. For a moment, he wondered if the wall was mocking him. Well, if it was, he'd have the last laugh. The glyphs began to glow as they started their routine, each step a calculated risk, a gamble with fate. It was like dancing on a razor's edge, and Bryn had always been terrible with sharp objects. But as the rhythm took hold, he felt something else stir, a glimmer of hope or maybe impending doom. Hard to tell, really. "Don't screw it up now," Gav muttered as he twirled past, almost losing his balance. "Just focus on the steps," Leora insisted. If we get this right, the temple's systems will respond. The panels lit up in response to their movements, a light show that would shame any terrestrial rave. Bryn felt the energy ripple through him, a current that was less about electric shocks and more about possibility. "Think it likes us yet?" Bryn asked, breathing heavily as he tried to keep pace. "If it doesn't, we can always bring flowers next time," Leora shot back, executing a particularly tricky maneuver with the grace of a drunk giraffe. The sequence was nearing its climax, the air around them charged with potential energy. It was now or never, a leap of faith over a chasm filled with the unknown. "Finale time," Gav said, his voice strained but determined. "Let's make it count." The trio surged forward together, each step a defiant act against their captors. For a moment, the universe seemed to pause, watching with bated breath to see if these foolish humans could pull off the impossible. Then, like a dam breaking, the temple's systems roared to life, sending a shockwave through the corridors. The glyphs blazed with light, a kaleidoscope of alien colors that danced across the walls in time with their movements. "Did we just hack an alien system by dancing?" Bryn asked, a laugh bubbling up despite his exhaustion. "Looks like it," Gav replied, sounding both amazed and incredulous. "I think we just became the galaxy's most unlikely hackers." The temple responded with a vengeance, systems activating in a symphony of chaos. The very foundations trembled as if the building itself was laughing, a deep, resonant thrum that echoed through their bones. Leora's eyes were wide with exhilaration. "We did it. We actually did it." The rhythmic pulses of light began to spread throughout the temple, reaching into every corner like an electric tide. Somewhere in the distance, alien sirens blared, a discordant melody of confusion and panic. "Time to put our escape plan into action," Bryn said, adrenaline overriding any lingering doubts. Before they realized we're the ones who hit the override switch, they dashed through the now familiar corridors, the temple's architecture shifting in response to their newfound command. Doors that once barred their way now slid open with a welcoming hiss, as if inviting them to make a speedy departure. Leora grinned, the thrill of the moment sparking in her eyes. "Feels good to finally be the ones in control for a change." "Let's not get cocky," Bryn warned, though he couldn't deny the satisfaction that thrummed through his veins. "We've still got to reach the Arcturus and get the hell out of here." As they ran, the alien overlords scurried like ants whose hill had been kicked over, their once imposing presence reduced to chaos. Bryn took a grim sort of pleasure in it, a reminder that even the mighty could be brought low by a well-timed dance routine. When they reached the docking bay, the Arcturus stood waiting, a familiar lifeline in a sea of alien confusion. Bryn's heart soared at the sight, the ship a beacon of hope in the madness. "Get aboard," he urged, motioning for Leora and Gav to hurry. "We don't have all day." They piled into the ship, laughter and relief mingling in the air as they sealed the hatch behind them. It was a heady mix of emotions, the kind that made you feel invincible and vulnerable all at once. Bryn slid into the pilot's seat, fingers dancing over controls that had always felt like an extension of himself. "All right, let's see if we can't get to Alpha Centauri without any more interstellar hijinks." The ship hummed to life beneath them, the familiar vibrations a comfort after so much uncertainty. As the docking bay doors opened and the stars beckoned beyond, Bryn allowed himself a moment of quiet triumph. "We did it," Leora said, leaning back in her seat with a contented sigh. "We're actually free." "Never doubted us for a second," Gav replied, though his grin suggested otherwise. "Just another day in the life of cosmic calamities." Bryn chuckled, the sound low and full of promise. "Here's to defying the odds and flipping the script." With the Arcturus accelerating into the vast unknown, the universe seemed to shimmer with possibilities. And as they left Saturn behind, Bryn couldn't help but feel that for all its trials, life among the stars was the only place he truly belonged. "So, what's the plan now?" Leora asked, her voice steady and full of curiosity for the future. Bryn considered the question, the weight of it settling into the silence. First, we put as much distance between us and this place as possible. Then we head for Alpha Centauri. Maybe find a planet that hasn't heard of us yet. Gav laughed, the sound infectious. And hopefully one that doesn't require a dance battle to unlock the front door. Leora chuckled, shaking her head in amusement. After everything we've been through, I'd say we've earned a little rest and relaxation. Bryn nodded, the tension of their ordeal gradually ebbing away. Agreed. A few days of peace sounds perfect. I could use a break from the drama. As the ship settled into its course, the three of them sat in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The stars streaked past, a reminder of the infinite adventures still waiting to be discovered. "Hey, Bryn," Gav said, breaking the quiet. "Next time you get us into trouble, maybe let's skip the interpretive dance." Bryn met his gaze with a wry smile. "I'll see what I can do, but no promises. You know how much the universe loves a good joke." And with that, they hurtled forward into the unknown, leaving behind the chaos of the temple and the alien overlords. But as far as Bryn was concerned, they could keep their mysterious artifacts and inscrutable glyphs. Humanity had its own rhythm, raw and unyielding, and it wasn't about to let anyone else call the tune. As the Arcturus continued its journey, the three of them felt a renewed sense of purpose, each step forward a testament to their resilience and ingenuity. No matter what the universe had in store for them, they were ready to face it head-on, with or without the aid of interpretive dance. "Here's to new beginnings," Leora said, raising an imaginary toast to the future. Gav nodded, his expression one of determination and camaraderie. "To surviving and thriving." Bryn joined in, a grin tugging at his lips, "and to never underestimating the power of human stubbornness." With that, the Arcturus slipped through the void, a testament to the indomitable spirit of its crew. The universe might throw them curveballs, but they knew how to swing for the fences, and they weren't afraid to dance their way out of trouble. Bryn leaned back in the pilot's seat, the familiar hum of the Arcturus vibrating through him. It was like an old song he'd almost forgotten, one that had been buried under the cacophony of alien sirens and the scream of systems coming back to life. The ship hummed not with the menace of alien tech but the promise of freedom. It was a nice change. "So, we survived a dance-off with aliens. What's next?" "A bake sale," Gav quipped from the co-pilot's seat, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the console. "Unless you plan on baking with radiation, I'd say let's skip that chapter," Bryn replied, his eyes scanning the controls. The ship was in surprisingly good shape, considering the misadventures they'd endured. Maybe the universe wasn't entirely against them after all, just mostly. Leora was stretched out in the seat behind them, her eyes closed as she basked in the momentary peace. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually looking forward to a boring trip to Earth. If boring means we're not dodging laser beams or dancing for our lives, sign me up," Gav said, adjusting the seat as if trying to find a less uncomfortable position. "I've had enough excitement to last several lifetimes. Think the aliens will miss us." Leora opened one eye, a smirk playing on her lips. Probably wondering how their sophisticated systems got upstaged by interpretive dance, Bryn said with a chuckle. "Imagine the report they'd have to file. Invasion thwarted by humans with questionable rhythm." Gav snorted. "Bet they'll think twice before underestimating Terran creativity again. Or our penchant for chaos," Leora added, stretching her arms above her head. "Doesn't matter where we are in the universe, we always find a way to make a mess." Bryn set the course for Earth, a small part of him wondering what awaited them there. Had things changed since they'd been gone? Would they even be welcomed back? He shook off the thoughts. "One crisis at a time. Once we're back, what's the plan?" Gav asked, breaking the silence. Bryn considered it for a moment. "Find somewhere remote, sit on a beach, and pretend none of this happened. At least for a week. Wouldn't mind a drink with an umbrella in it," Leora mused, her voice far away. "Preferably one not served by an alien overlord. You think they have margaritas on Alpha Centauri?" Gav asked, a grin spreading across his face. If they do, they're probably brewed in a coffee maker that doubles as an alien artifact, Bryn replied, shaking his head. I'll pass. They shared a laugh, the kind that bubbled up in the aftermath of chaos when adrenaline had nowhere else to go. It was a good sound, a human sound, more comforting than the ship's hum or the distant stars sliding past. Seriously, though, Leora said, her tone more somber, what do we do with all of this? We've got knowledge, experience. A pretty good story. We tell it, Bryn said. People need to know what's out there, what we can do when the chips are down. Let's hope they believe us, Gav added, a hint of skepticism in his voice. Or else we'll be the crazy folk raving about alien dance-offs. They'll believe us, Bryn said with more confidence than he felt. We've got the scars to prove it. The ship's trajectory was smooth, the vastness of space around them a welcome emptiness after the cramped corridors of the temple. Bryn allowed himself a moment to breathe, savoring the feeling of being untethered, free. Earth, Bryn said, as if tasting the word. It'll be good to be back, and maybe we can finally get out of these jumpsuits, Leora said, tugging at the sleeve of her worn-out prison attire. I'd kill for a decent pair of jeans. First world problems, Leora, Gav teased. Remember when your biggest worry was fitting into your old clothes? Hey, I'll take vanity over survival any day, Leora shot back, a playful glint in her eye. Bryn's gaze drifted to the stars, the cosmic tapestry outside, a reminder of how small they were in the grand scheme. And yet they'd made a difference, a crack in the alien facade. Maybe humanity wasn't as insignificant as they thought. Gav leaned back, watching the stars streak past. Think they'll name a day after us? Bryn chuckled. Depends. You think Intergalactic Dance-Off Day rolls off the tongue? Not exactly a holiday Hallmark's ready for, Leora said, shaking her head. But I'd celebrate it. Hey, any excuse for a party, right? Gav grinned, eyes twinkling. Speaking of, Bryn began, his mind wandering back to the temple. What do you think those aliens were guarding so fiercely? Leora shrugged. Could be anything. Power. Knowledge. Maybe their version of Netflix. Whatever it was, they sure didn't want us messing with it, Gav said, his expression thoughtful. Which makes it all the more satisfying that we did. We may never know, Bryn admitted. But what we do know is enough. We survived. We adapted. Humanity's a tough nut to crack. I'll drink to that, Gav said, raising an imaginary toast. Once we're back and well away from any alien entanglements. Here's hoping Earth has less of those, Leora murmured, her eyes scanning the stars as if searching for familiar constellations. They lapsed into silence, the kind that comes when words fail to capture the enormity of what's been experienced. Each of them lost in their thoughts, processing the whirlwind of events that had brought them to this point. Anyone got any requests for our triumphant return playlist? Bryn asked, breaking the quiet. I was thinking something upbeat. Maybe Queen, Don't Stop Me Now, Gav suggested with a grin. Fitting, Leora agreed, nodding along. Bryn queued up the track, the familiar strains filling the cockpit, a soundtrack to their victory. It was a good feeling, the kind that made the future seem a little less daunting. Think they'll roll out the red carpet for us? Gav mused, half joking. More likely the men in white coats, Bryn replied, though he couldn't suppress a smile. But I'll take what I can get. Here's to new beginnings, Leora said, echoing her earlier sentiment. Her voice was steady, full of hope and determination. Gav nodded, his expression reflecting the camaraderie and shared purpose they'd discovered along the way. To surviving and thriving. Bryn joined in, feeling the weight of their journey lift, replaced by something lighter, brighter. And to never underestimating the power of human stubbornness. As the Arcturus slipped through the void, the three of them felt a renewed sense of purpose, each step forward a testament to their resilience and ingenuity. No matter what the universe had in store for them, they were ready to face it head-on, with or without the aid of interpretive dance. The chatter died down as the reality of returning to Earth settled over them. They'd left as explorers, hopeful and wide-eyed. They were returning as something else, tempered by fire and ready to share their story. Think anyone will be left to greet us? Gav asked, a hint of worry in his voice. Only one way to find out, Bryn said, his resolve firm. But I'll bet on humanity any day. We're a resilient bunch and stubborn, Leora added with a wry smile. Don't forget stubborn. Never, Bryn replied, his gaze steady on the stars. It might just save us all. With the stars as their witness, they sped towards a future unknown but full of promise. In the wake of alien chaos and cosmic dance battles, humanity had found its rhythm. And Bryn knew, come what may, they'd keep dancing to the beat of their own drum.